Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into some fascinating but kind of unsettling territory today. Psychological experiments.
Ooh, yeah, the ones that make you question everything you thought you knew about people.
Exactly. Specifically, we're looking at two of the most famous, or infamous maybe, Milgram's obedience experiment and
Ugh.
Zimberto's Stanford Prison Experiment.
Classics, but definitely controversial.
Big time.
Hmm.
They reveal some, well, uncomfortable truths about what we're capable of under pressure. Like, imagine yourself in Milgram's study at Yale. You're told to give electric shocks to someone in another room every time they answer a question wrong.
Ugh, just thinking about it makes me squirm. But would you actually do it? Deliver those shocks?
That's the question that cuts to the core of it, right? Like, how far would we go when an authority figure is giving the orders?
Milgram wanted to see if our own morals would win out or if obedience would take over.
And the results were pretty shocking.
Pun intended?
Maybe. But seriously, 65% of participants went all the way to the highest voltage. 65%.
It makes you wonder what was going on in their heads. Was it the Yale setting, the fact that it was a scientific experiment, or something deeper about human nature?
Right. What do you think explains that level of obedience?
Well, Milgram pointed to a few things. The authority figure, the guy in the lab coat, was a big one. We're kind of wired to obey those we see as experts or in charge.
Yeah, like we're conditioned to trust them.
Exactly. And the shocks got stronger gradually, so it was harder to stop once you'd started, little by little, a slippery slope.
That's a good point. But there's the ethical dilemma, right? People believed they were causing real pain.
Oh, yeah, huge ethical concerns there. It sparked a massive debate in psychology about how far we can push things in the name of research. Imagine going home after that, thinking you might have seriously hurt someone.
The psychological impact must have been enormous, even if the shocks were fake. Makes you think about the responsibility researchers have to protect their participants.
Absolutely. But even with all the controversy, Milgram's experiment made people face some hard truths, like the idea that anyone could be capable of terrible things under the right or wrong circumstances.
Especially after World War II and all the atrocities committed under orders, it really shook people up. Some saw Milgram as a visionary, others thought he went way too far.
Yeah, a debate that still goes on. But for now, let's switch gears to another ethically charged experiment, the Stanford Prison Experiment.
From a sterile Yale lab to a mock prison, this one takes us from obedience to the power of social roles. Buckle up, things get pretty intense.
This is where Zimbardo's work really shines a light on the dark side of human behavior. Get ready for a wild ride.
Okay, so Milgram showed us how powerful authority can be. Now let's dive into Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Experiment. This one took regular college students, made some guards, some prisoners, all in a fake prison setting, and things got real fast.
Oh, yeah. Zimbardo basically built a hyper-realistic prison in the basement of Stanford. No actors, just students playing roles. But within days, you saw the guards becoming authoritarian, even abusive. And the prisoners just withdrew, became totally passive.
It's wild, right? Like, these were people who probably knew each other before the experiment, just regular students.
Exactly, but the roles they were given, the environment, it completely took over.
So what did Zimbardo say caused this transformation? Like, how did these students change so drastically in such a short time?
He believed it was the situation itself, the power dynamics, the environment. They created this monster. You give someone a uniform, a little bit of authority, unchecked power, they often fall into that role. And on the flip side, you strip someone of their identity, make them powerless, they react accordingly.
Our psyches become a script, and the environment tells us what role to play.
Crazy, right?
The experiment was supposed to last 2 weeks, but Zimbardo had to shut it down after 6 days.
6 days. That's how bad it got.
Yeah. The ethical implications are pretty obvious. I mean, some would say it's one of the most ethically messed up studies ever done.
For sure. The distress that participants went through, especially the prisoners,
Yeah.
it's just not justifiable. Zimbardo himself has admitted they messed up, ethically speaking.
It's a tough lesson. Like, wanting to understand human behavior is important, but not at the cost of people's well-being.
Yeah.
It becomes a cautionary tale.
Definitely. But now, thinking about both these experiments, Milgram and Zimbardo, it paints a kind of bleak picture, doesn't it? Are we all just waiting to become cruel guards or blindly obedient followers?
Right. Like, is that all there is to us? No hope for the good stuff?
Well, hold on. We got to remember these experiments don't show the whole picture. They highlight how we can be bad.
Like, how susceptible we are to the bad stuff.
Right. But they also show our capacity for good, for resistance.
Yeah.
Even in Milgram's study, not everyone obeyed.
That's true. Some people refuse to keep shocking.
Exactly. And in Zimbardo's prison, even with all that craziness, there were acts of kindness, of resistance. Not every guard was a monster.
So it's not as simple as saying, oh, we're all doomed to be terrible. It's more nuanced.
Exactly. We have the capacity for both. The question is, how do we understand that? How do we navigate this duality?
And how do we make sure the good stuff wins out?
Well, this is where psychology and philosophy meet. We got to understand not just what we do, but the WHY behind it.
So it's not enough to study the dark side. We need to figure out how to make good choices, how to build systems that support those choices.
Exactly. Like, think of whistleblowers. They resist pressure, speak up when they see wrongdoing.
They stand up when it would be easier to stay silent. That takes guts.
It does. And they often face huge consequences for doing the right thing.
It shows you how powerful systems can be, how they protect those in charge, even when they're wrong. But going back to encouraging ethical behavior, how do we apply philosophy to make better choices as individuals and as a society?
Education is a big one. We need to teach people how to think critically, how to recognize when something's wrong, and how to stand up for what's right.
Not just learning facts, but learning how to use that knowledge ethically.
Right. It's about building a sense of responsibility, going beyond just following the rules, understanding that our choices have consequences for ourselves and others.
So moving from a me-first approach to ethics to something more community-focused.
Exactly. We need empathy, compassion, the ability to see things from different perspectives, and understanding that real-world ethics, they're messy, they're complex.
It's not just about following some abstract rules. It's about understanding the real impact our actions have on other people.
Right. So we need individual responsibility, systemic change, and a cultural shift towards valuing ethics. It's a long game, not a quick fix.
Okay, that's the big picture stuff.
Yeah.
But what about our listeners? What can they do in their own lives to be more ethical?
Start with yourself. What are your values? What do you stand for? What are your non-negotiables? Once you know that, you can apply it to your everyday choices.
Like taking a moral inventory. What kind of person do you want to be? And are your actions matching up with that?
Exactly. And don't be afraid to challenge yourself. We all mess up. But it's about learning from those mistakes and trying to do better next time. Surround yourself with people who share your values.
Like an ethical support system. But what about when you're facing a really tough ethical dilemma? No easy answers, high stakes. How do you deal with that?
There's no simple formula. But first, get all the info you can. Understand the situation, the potential consequences, different perspectives.
Do your homework, basically. Think things through before jumping in.
Right. Talk to people you trust, people who are ethical themselves. Sometimes just talking it out helps you see things more clearly.
Like an ethical sounding board to help you process it all. But what if you've done all that and you're still stuck?
Then you got to trust your gut. What feels right, even if it's hard or unpopular. Sometimes the most ethical choice takes the most courage.
So it's reason, reflection, and intuition, and India heart. And remembering that we're not alone in this. We need each other. We need communities. We need wisdom from others.
I like that. These experiments, as messed up as they are, they make us think. They remind us we're capable of both good and bad, and our choices shape the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ethics isn't some abstract concept. It's woven into everything we do. It's about constantly asking ourselves, are we doing this the right way? And remembering that our actions have an impact on others.
Beautifully put. It's about taking responsibility both individually and collectively for creating a more just and compassionate world.
All right, we're back. We've covered some intense territory with Milgram and Zimbardo, their experiments, the ethical debates. Kind of heavy stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. It really makes you think about the whole field of psychology. Like, did these studies change anything? How do we do research now, knowing what we know?
Exactly. So what happened after all that controversy? Did psychology just sweep it under the rug?
Oh, no, not at all. If anything, those experiments were like a wake-up call, a huge push for better ethical practices.
So it wasn't just about the pursuit of knowledge anymore, no matter the cost.
Right. Now it's about finding a balance. Scientific progress, yeah, but not at the expense of people.
I mean, you mentioned those strong reactions to Milgram's study.
Yeah, the outrage, the debates, those led to some big changes. Like, now we have ethical review boards for pretty much all research.
Oh, so like a committee that checks if a study is ethical before it happens.
Exactly. They look at the risks, the benefits, make sure it meets strict standards, and these boards have people from all sorts of backgrounds, not just scientists.
That makes sense. Checks and balances, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of changes did these boards actually bring about? What's different now?
Well, one of the biggest is informed consent. Before you participate in ANY study, you got to know what's up, the procedures, the risks, the benefits, even the hypothesis, like what they're actually testing.
No more going in blind.
Nope. You get to decide if you want to participate with all the facts, no surprises.
Makes sense to me. But what about those studies where you need deception for it to work? Like if you tell people what you're looking for, won't that mess up the results?
Yeah, that's tricky. Deception eye is still used sometimes, but it's super regulated. Like, the researchers got to prove there's no other way to do the study.
So it's going to be really important, and they can't just lie to people for no reason.
Right. And even then, you got to debrief the participants afterward, explain what really happened, clear up any confusion.
So no one goes home thinking they're a terrible person for following instructions.
Exactly. But it seems like these rules are all about preventing harm. What about the potential benefits of research? Shouldn't we also be concerned about that?
Yeah, like isn't it ethical to try to find out things that could help people?
Oh, absolutely. It's about finding that balance, protecting individuals, but also moving knowledge forward for the greater good. Like, think about medical research, clinical trials, testing new drugs. There's always some risk, right?
Yeah, but the potential payoff is huge if it leads to a cure or a better treatment.
Yeah. Exactly. So those review boards weigh all that. Are the risks worth it, given the potential benefits? It's a tough call sometimes.
So it's not just about stopping bad research, it's about making sure the good research is done ethically too.
Right. It's like ethics isn't just a checklist anymore. It's baked into the whole process, constantly asking, are we doing this the right way?
That's good to hear. But zooming out a bit, where do you see psychology going in the future? Any exciting areas of research that are, learning from these past mistakes?
Oh, tons. One that I find really interesting is positive psychology. It's kind of the opposite of focusing on what's wrong with people. It's about strengths, resilience, what makes life good.
So instead of fixing what's broken, it's about building on what's already working.
Exactly. They're studying happiness, gratitude, compassion, meaning in life, trying to understand how to cultivate those things.
Sounds a lot more uplifting than those shock experiments.
It is. And the ethical dilemmas are usually less intense too. But that doesn't mean ethics are unimportant. You still need informed consent, confidentiality, all that.
So it's not just about the topic of the research, it's about how you do it. Ethics is part of the process, always.
I'd say so. And honestly, it goes beyond just research too. It's about bringing that ethical lens to everything, how we build technology, how we treat each other.
Those experiments, even though they were controversial, they had a ripple effect. They made us confront some hard truths about ourselves and about how we do science.
Yeah, they forced us to ask some tough questions and hopefully to find better answers.
Well said. So to everyone listening, we encourage you to keep learning about all of this, the experiments, the ethics, the psychology, and think about your own WN values. How can you contribute to a more ethical world? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.